Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Psych Crusader. So I don't know if you all noticed on when you're clicking in, but I have created a exclusive Psych Crusader thumbnail. I'm getting like really techie here. I think that's what happens when like Elon Musk, comes into the White House. Like I automatically get, techie smart. So I don't know if that's the case, but I learned how to do thumbnails, and they're actually way easier than I thought they were going to be. Like, I don't know why I've been like so scared to look into the thumbnails. But next, I need to come up with like theme music. So I might start playing with that. But let's get down to business. If you like my show, and I hope you do, because I'm here trying to help people. I just want people to understand, a little bit more about themselves or about their family members or loved ones or anybody who goes through mental health issues. That's what this is all about. So if you like the show, like, subscribe, and ding the bell. I'd be more than happy to have you as a follower. So also, this is a safe space in the comment section, especially on the lives. The live comments, actually, I'm pretty sure they disappear after I publish. So, but I do check the comments. So if you have anything that you want to add after the live, it will show up, and I will read them and respond to them. So if you have questions and comments and concerns, I will respond to them. I have this habit of making sure that I respond to everything. I do it on my TikTok too. I get hundreds of comments a day on TikTok, and I feel like I'm letting someone down if I don't say something to them. So feel free to voice your opinion and share experiences. So this week we're going to talk about having sociopathic tendencies, being a sociopath. It's one of those other words out there that a lot of people overuse. Anytime somebody doesn't do what you want them to do, they automatically turn into either a narcissist or a sociopath. So I want to, kind of clear the air with that and like kind of go through today and talk about what makes someone an actual sociopath and what is it that that kind of causes these things. What can we do to kind of dial that back? So let's get right into it. First, let's talk about what is a sociopath. So it's an outdated, informal term for someone who has antisocial personality disorder. So being a sociopath is not a disorder. However, it is part of the antisocial personality disorder. So we need to understand that, and there's several different other conditions and that fall under that. So we're going to talk just exclusively about being a sociopath today. And so the disorder can cause you like a lack of empathy. And that means that you don't really care or like understand people's feelings. I think a lot of people who go through a long period of trauma in their life, that you kind of feel like your feelings are deadened. And I believe that is a lot of what is going to be relatable to being a sociopath, where you just don't have the feelings to react to people or their hurt or even their happiness. Sometimes you just don't care, or you don't have an emotional response towards that. There's no reaction. So you might not feel remorse or bad for the things that you do. And you might often take advantage of others for your own personal gain. I think that's pretty accurate. Like I said, just generally on every show that I do on the Psych Crusader, I pull my information from the Mayo Clinic. So if you don't like what I have to say, go sue them, like always. So moving on, scientists aren't sure exactly what causes antisocial personality disorder when it comes to being a sociopath. But both nature and nurture seem to be involved. You're more likely to have ASPD if you have a family history of the disorder, or you experience something traumatic like growing up, through growing up. So that's kind of the generalization of a lot of other disorders. Is, if it's genetic, you have a higher probability of exerting these symptoms and signs. However, if you go through traumatic, whether you have the ability, the genetic trait, or everybody has the genetic trait, but whether your genetics activates it, that's a whole other situation. And you can have traumatic events that will trigger that. Because as we know from other, hi, Shauna, but as we know from other conditions that we've talked about on the show, this is a way for the mind to protect itself. And it's easily how that works. And we need to understand that when we start to go through traumatic events, that we need to be aware that our mind will do things to protect itself. And generally, you will develop these conditions that and turn into something that you can't just wake up and cure. You can't just go to the doctor and take 2 pills and you're going to be fine. Once you've activated it, it's there, and you're going to have to learn how to live with it and maintain it, and kind of box it in to keep it under control. Same thing goes with being a sociopath. You're also more likely to have it if you're male, or had behavioral problems as a child, or grew up in an unstable environment. Many people are unaware of the disorder and may never be diagnosed, which is very common amongst other conditions. And we've learned about those as well, to where people just aren't aware that they're doing these things. I know when I was growing up, I always had people, especially when I got closer to adulthood, people kept telling me, "Hey, you got something wrong. Something wrong. You don't think normal. You don't act normal." And I blew it off and blew it off. It wasn't until I got into my early 20s is when I was like, you know what, there might be something there, and I should probably go get it looked at. And then, so if I didn't have, a caring group of people around me at that time, I may not have been able to self-identify that I needed, to get some help and understand what is going on with me. So I encourage, people, when you're starting to see these signs and you're starting to hear people, they're asking you odd questions about your behavior, that they're obviously trying to get somewhere with it. Maybe it's time to go, talk to a psychiatrist, find out what's going on, and that way you have a plan. A lot of times, as long as when you develop your own plan, it's going to save you a lot of headache and heartache in the future. So the word sociopath and its cousin psychopath, it carries a lot of stigma and misconceptions. Popular movies and books tend to show sociopaths as cruel and heartless, which it can be. It can be. I'm not going to say it's not. Um, but as a result, people often think that those with ASPD are always going to be criminals. That is not always the case. But these stereotypes, they make it hard for people with ASPD and their families to identify the condition and seek help. So there's a fine line there where, the majority of people who have these diagnoses are not going to be like psychotic raging lunatics and they're going to go to jail. The majority of them actually are, they can treat, they'll treat, and they'll go through their therapies, and they'll take their antidepressants or their psychotropes, whatever the doctor prescribes them, to maintain in their normal daily life. The people with a heightened sense of the disorder are the ones who are going to have more problems. The ones who don't accept that this is what's going on, they're going to have more problems, because denial is going to feed that, what your behavior, you're going to enable your own behavior, saying that, hey, my behavior is normal, I don't have anything wrong with me, but yet you're acting erratic. Generally, you're going to increase your destructive behavior. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but so to avoid the stigma, we want to we don't really want to look at people that are potentially sociopathic and continue to look down upon them. It's one of those situations where obviously they've gone through something where it's genetic, and their mind has done this protective um, mentality that it's inserted to keep itself safe. And so it's not something that these people are doing. It's not something that they're conscious that they consciously created to happen. It's something that just happened because of the circumstances of their livelihood, or through genetic enhancement. So we need to get away from that stigma, that it's of let's just avoid people that have sociopathic tendencies or psychopathic tendencies, because they're not all gonna take you out behind the barn and chop you up into a million pieces. It doesn't work like that. So in casual conversation, focus on, when you're talking to people about their issues, you want to focus on the person's problematic behaviors, um, such as lying or illegal behavior, rather than labeling them a sociopath. The worst thing you can do is constantly ram that down their throat, because as we know, through many different aspects of life, once you have given a label, a negative stigma, then it's going to affect someone's mind. And they're every time they hear it, they're going to hear that you're saying they're negative. And sometimes it's best to avoid the label itself and just talk about the behaviors, because the behaviors are what matters anyway. It doesn't matter what you call someone. It's the behaviors that matter. And well, I mean, that kind of goes together with, like, with race relations. Kind of, it doesn't matter what they're labeled, it matters what their behavior is exerting. So, and that can go with anything. So what you want to do is focus on the behaviors. So if they're attributing illegals, they're starting to attribute illegal activities, or they're starting to become aggressive, or there's a lot of lying, talk about it with them. Just be open. Say, hey, I noticed. Hey, G bro, what's up, man? I just talk to him and say, hey, I noticed, like, we talk about a lot of things, and things generally that you tell me aren't quite true. It's okay to tell me the truth. Just assure them that it's okay to be truthful, that you'll accept their response no matter if it's hurtful or helpful. And I think giving someone who's dealing with antisocial personality disorders on the sociopath side, um, it's going to be reassuring to them, and it's going to help you. They may open up and say, okay, I can show my real self to this person, because they're not going to judge me, and they're not going to look down upon my thought process. And test feed that out a few times, and just be receptive to whatever they say, and you're going to build a rapport that they're going to get comfortable with, and they're going to generally they're going to seek you out when they're having issues, and you're going to be able to help them. Same thing goes for illegal activities. You talk to them about their illegal activities. You don't say, hey, sociopath, let's talk about all these crimes you're out here committing. That's not a productive way to talk to somebody, whether they have a mental condition or not. So you want to really make that approach as neutralized as possible, as understanding and warm and inviting as possible when you talk to your family or loved ones, or whoever, your friend, while they're going through these issues. Just leave that door open for conversation. Like, hey, what else? Is there something else we can do other than getting in trouble? Because getting in trouble is not productive. That's your family's got to go bail you out, and you got to go to court, and you got to pay consequences. You might have to sit in jail. You might have to pay fines. What else can we do that's productive? What hobbies do you have? Do you like to take walks outside? What do you like to do? You want to go fishing? What are these things? What are things that are out there that we can do to deflect from the negative behavior? So, find that common ground with someone to kind of pull them and say, hey, illegal activities isn't going to work. Let's do this instead. So when you're talking clinically, the Mayo Clinic suggests that you refer to them as a person with ASPD. It lowers the shame around the disorder so that people can feel more comfortable getting a diagnosis and seeking treatment. I mean, it's a wordplay thing, you know. I prefer to avoid uh, the labeling of disorders when it comes to talking to the person with the disorder. Just in case, you know, they may see ASPD as a negative thing. They may have been getting bullied with that or getting made fun of about that. So I just avoid it altogether, just in case. So there are high functioning sociopaths. So we're going to cover that next. So, you know, you're going to have a heavy tendency to try to manipulate people. It's just kind of like how we talked with the dark triad last week, or was it? Yeah, it was last week when we talked about the dark triad. So the manipulation part of it is going to be a big thing. Sociopaths, they don't care about your feelings. They don't care about the consequences of their actions generally. So for them to manipulate you, they're going to be okay with that. They're going to be okay with trying to steer you in the wrong direction. So you definitely have to be careful, especially when you're opening a door to them and trying to offer them a safe place to go, you know, in conversation, because they will try to manipulate you, and that is a high functioning form of being a sociopath. Um, you know, some may hold like highly respected careers, such as business people, because in the business world, if you have feelings, your business isn't going to do very well because you can't feel sorry for everybody. You may have to fire somebody one day. You can't build a personal relationship with the people that you're probably going to have to fire without remorse later. So that is a big thing. Generally, sociopaths do very well in the business world because of that lack of empathy towards people. They might seem charismatic or charming, but they're actually very manipulative. Very, very manipulative. If they're acting charming towards you, it's because they want something. And they're trying to get you inside of this box so they can maneuver you around. So they're generally going to manipulate people to get to where they want to be in jobs, school, whatever it is that they're trying to do. They're going to use the manipulation tactic. And the same can be true in their personal life as well. You know, they can manipulate their spouse or their girlfriend or boyfriend, or I don't want to exclusively say this is a man problem because it's not always a man problem. So there's also low functioning sociopaths. They might not have like the advanced social skills that a high functioning sociopath has, but they'll quietly manipulate and deceive. They'll do it a little bit more slick and sly. They might rely on threats or violence to get what they want because they're not quite at that like elite manipulation level. So they'll get frustrated and then just lash out. So the low functioning ones there's a little bit more physical risk involved. So you have to be careful of that. They may also engage in illegal behavior, and they often have other harmful conditions like addiction. And these can lead into more serious conditions such as like bipolar disorder on the more severe end. So next, we're going to talk about the borderline sociopath. So there's no such thing as a borderline sociopath. Either you're high functioning or low functioning, or you're not a sociopath at all. So this can be confusing because we've already talked about this in previous shows with borderline personality disorder. So that's where the confusion comes in because a lot of the symptoms are the same. So you could have a borderline personality disorder, but it'll look like being a borderline sociopath, but really there is no borderline sociopath. You're either one extreme or the other, or not at all. So both of those are part of the family of disorders called cluster B. They're B cluster personality disorders, so they tend to have some of the same characteristics. They tend to cause emotional, unpredictable, dramatic behavior. People with borderline personality disorder have mood swings driven by stress, low self-esteem, fear, and abandonment, which we've already learned about in a few shows ago. It's common for people with ASPD to also be diagnosed BPD. So you can have that multiple diagnosis, which I think is where, it does look like a borderline sociopath, but really it's not. You're just experiencing borderline personality disorder. So now let's break down the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, because there's a difference. So people often confuse the term sociopath and psychopath and use them interchangeably. They aren't different in the clinical sense. Neither is an official diagnosis. They're just conditions of a diagnosis. They both refer to someone who has ASPD. You can think of psychopathy as a subset with its own set of behaviors that kind of sets it apart from sociopathy. On the ASPD spectrum, psychopathy is generally seen as a more severe form of ASPD than sociopathy. All my animals are acting crazy right now. I don't know why. So according to the research, psychopathy has a stronger genetic association. Scientists think that parts of the brain involved in emotions don't fully develop in people with psychopathy. Although it can also be inherited. Abuse and trauma, childhood, atmospheric conditions are more common causes. So once again, we have where your conditional environment tends to play a big role, but there's also the genetic form of it in the psychopathy. So the sociopathy traits, we'll go over them a little bit more in depth here. So, I mean, it's important to realize that people have many personality traits. Some may exhibit selfishness or act aggressively, but that doesn't mean they have ASPD necessarily. It means they have other behavioral issues going on. I just kicked my camera. Since many people who have ASPD don't recognize these traits as a problem, watching for consistent behavior patterns is necessary. You want to find the patterns. That's the whole point of getting treatment, is finding the patterns. So here's some of the common signs. Lack of empathy, which we've already talked about. Impulsive behavior. So that follows many other conditions as well, specifically ADHD. When you're impulsive, you don't really care. You just react. You just are reacting extremely to something. So attempting to control others with threats or aggression, that's a sign. Using intelligence, charm, or charisma to manipulate others. Not learning from mistakes or punishment because they just don't care of the repercussions. Lying for personal gain. Showing a tendency towards physical violence and fights. Generally with people with psychopathy and sociopathy, they don't, fighting is going to be violence and fighting is going to be very normal to them. It's going to be common to them. It's going to be, something that is very easy for them to do. They're going to choose it. So we have to be very careful. Generally, superficial relationships that don't really mean anything because they don't really have any empathy or emotion towards their partner. Sometimes stealing or committing other crimes, threatening suicide to manipulate without the intention of actually doing it. They want to keep people engaged in their behavior. So they're going to do things that are going to try to get people to engage in their behavior. They could abuse drugs or alcohol. They have trouble with responsibilities such as a job or paying bills. They usually struggle in those, in jobs or just main, common things like paying bills. They just can't do it. They just don't care to do it. So here's some like little trigger responses that you need to pay attention to that people with ASPD will say. So these are kind of like your red flags. They will say, well, it wasn't my fault. They're never going to take responsibility for anything. They're never going to care long enough to take responsibility for anything. Instead of accepting blame, manipulators might lie or downplay their role in the conflict. It might make you feel sympathetic. They'll say, that's not true. They're going to deny until death. People with ASPD often lie to get what they want. They'll also say, I've never met someone as kind as you. They're going to give you this utmost flattery because they're setting you up for stage 2. They'll say, at least you don't have it as bad as me. The sympathy, like, hey, feel bad for me kind of thing. They're invalidating your feelings, so you'll focus on them. Or they'll say sarcastic things and then they'll be like, oh, just kidding, even though they know they're hurting you. They're emotionally hurting you, mentally hurting you. They'll say, I did it for you. I did this for you. That puts the blame on you. It takes it says, I did this bad behavior or I did this wrong, but I did it for you. Here's another one. They say all the time, if you really loved me, you wouldn't do this. I had an ex-wife that used to tell me that all the time. Not saying she's a sociopath, but just saying. It's a manipulation tactic that might take advantage of your feelings so they can get their way. Makes you lose your own self-importance, your own self-esteem. You're going to feel bad. And because, I do love you, but you don't think I love you. So, I guess I'm not showing you I love you enough. And now you don't think I love you. So it's just a big circle of guilt tripping. Here's another one. If you break up with me, I'll kill myself. So they're going to make you take responsibility for their negative behavior. So if they're saying, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself, they're putting it on you now. So if something happens, they want to make sure you know that you're going to get blamed for it and not them. They'll also say you're imagining things, making you doubt your own reality. Easy manipulation, gaslighting, blah, blah, blah. So some further instructions on how to deal with someone with sociopathic tendencies. Number 1, protect yourself. Do not let them put you in a vulnerable situation. They're going to try to. This is not something to play around with. If you go in, you better have your walls up 10 feet higher than you, and they better be about 12 feet thick because they are going to tack. They're going to chip away at your wall until they get in. Even if it's a friend or a loved one, you got to put your well-being first when dealing with somebody who's a sociopath. You're not going to be able to just put your wall down because they're a loved one. They don't see you as a loved one. They don't feel you as a loved one. So don't give that benefit of the doubt to them because they're going to abuse you with it. So you want to maintain your boundaries, keep your interactions with them short and to the point, avoid engaging with them emotionally, and do not give them any personal information or sensitive details. Absolutely not, because they are going to use it against you later. Guaranteed every time. So if you want to keep your sanity intact, don't give them anything that they can use as a weapon against you later. And they will. And they'll keep it for 10 years if they have to. They'll pull it out when they need it. Seek support and guidance. Turn to other friends and family members for emotional support when you have to deal with someone that's a sociopath on a regular basis. If possible, consult with a mental health professional for further guidance on how to deal with a person with ASPD. Educate yourself. Learn the signs, symptoms, the behaviors. Understand what you're walking into, their motivations, their tendencies. Anything that you need to know, go learn it. Avoid confrontation because they will escalate a situation very quickly and it will be radical. So please avoid confrontation. Let them win an argument. There's no pride involved here. Take your pride out because when they start to get upset, let them win. It's going to be way worth it. You're not going to convince them they're wrong anyway. Remain as neutral as possible. Showing emotion can leave you vulnerable to manipulation. So just be neutral. Go in there neutral. Listen, advise, and leave it at that. Don't wear your heart on the sleeve when you're going in there. Don't try to change them. They are not going to change. You're not going to change their behavior, their thought process as far as empathy and emotion towards pleasing people is gone. Don't try to bring it back. You can't. People with ASPD do not see that they have a problem, and it can be very difficult to change their view. It may also cause them to become more enraged, violent, and manipulative. So when you push somebody with these conditions, you are basically poking a bear. Do not poke a bear. It's not smart. If they start to go off on the deep end, let them go. You're not going to stop it. If you can find yourself in a very isolating situation when you're dealing with someone with ASPD, because it's not an easy thing to go through, and a lot of people do not want to go through it. And so if you're somebody who has chosen to be in this life with someone that is experiencing this, you're going to be very isolated a lot. You're going to find out that nobody's there absorbing your emotions, your responses, your positive responses towards your partner or your friend or whatever is just not going to get acknowledged. And so you're going to start to feel isolated and your self-worth is going to be affected. So you have to understand that going in to keep that intact. I wouldn't even offer it because you're not going to get any response that is going to be beneficial to you personally. Also, if you're in a relationship or somebody with this, it's okay to seek therapy yourself to kind of work these things out. And, a good therapist is going to help you. They're going to help you, hey, try this. Hey, try this. Hey, try this. And there may be something that sticks, something that will help you out. You're not going to be able to change their behavior. So seeing a therapist might help you try to understand and cope with ways to kind of get your boundaries put together so you can protect yourself and maybe, other loved ones. If you have experienced anxiety and depression as a result, support groups or therapy can help you. Have someone to talk to it's going to make things a lot easier. Don't try to tackle this on your own. It's going to be tasking. So to kind of conclude this, so people with ASPD they're not evil. Okay. So we can't look at them as evil, even though a lot of their personality traits are very negative. They're not evil people. They just have a condition that makes it hard for them to empathize with others. They're struggling with it and they just don't feel. A lot of times they want to feel, they just can't feel. And that's okay. You don't have to put pressure on them or give up on them or treat them like they should, belong in prison. You want to empathize, try to, understand. And, they don't react well to people. or with others, or act according to social society norms. They struggle with that. They can provide information about possible treatments or strategies to address manipulative behaviors. Um, treatment is usually therapy and some medication. There's no secret to fixing this, and it's just going to take a lot of work and protections. Generally, they're going to go through cognitive behavioral therapy, and we've talked about this on several other episodes. But just to kind of briefly go back over it, it's talking therapy. When you sit down with your therapist and you talk about all your issues. There's another one, mentalization-based therapy, and it's talk therapy that helps people understand how their mental state affects their behavior. So it helps them kind of unwind all those thoughts to say, well, is my thought process positive or negative? They're going to help them kind of work that out. There's also the democratic therapeutic communities. It's a social therapy that involves working with others to solve problems and make decisions. It's kind of like group therapy, but you're actually problem solving. You're working with each other to solve the problem instead of just sharing, like, here's my experience, here's my experience, here's my experience. DTC can be effective for people with ASPD who are incarcerated, especially. Also, medications are generally used with that. So generally, they're given antidepressants, antipsychotics. It's a long-term treatment because it's not just going to go away. So that's kind of the gist of someone who's struggling with sociopathic behavior. It's not an easy thing, and we need to be patient. We need to protect ourselves when dealing with people that have these conditions and symptoms, and just be positive. And when they're ready to be walked into a good direction, take them there. But you have to remember that they may be following you to let you walk yourself into something bad. So always protect yourself, be in control, but be passive. I want to say a little bit passive at the same time, but have your guard up. So that's going to be the end of my show today. I will be back here tomorrow doing the Expendable show. Get caught up on all the politics of stuff for the week, and there's a lot. But thanks for jumping in today, and I hope everybody stays safe. Once again, if you comment on the comments, I will check back tomorrow and see if anybody's asked any questions or anything. Be safe out there. Care about each other. Be kind. It's not hard. It's not hard to be kind. Be patient with people struggling with mental disorders. It's really easy. All right. I'm out of here. Peace.